ॐ निरञ्जनम् नित्यमनन्तरूपम् भक्तानुकम्पा धृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारम् परमेशमीड्यम् तं रामकृष्णम् शिरसा नमामः.
Namaste everyone and welcome to our study of the Vedanta lectures of Swami Vivekananda. We are studying his famous lecture, the Vedanta, delivered in Lahore, 1897. And we finished the second lesson here, in which we discussed this wonderful doctrine of the Atman. That's very unique to Hinduism or all the schools of Vedanta, or in the Sankhya and the Vedanta. So today we are going to take the next lesson, which is very interesting, because this idea of the Atman as the fundamental entity was challenged by the Buddhists, and it was refuted by the famous, well-known philosopher who established the Advaita philosophy, Acharya Shankara. So while we go through that, it might seem to be a bit of an intellectual thing, but if you are patient to follow this, you'll appreciate why and how Vedanta is so powerful as a very rational, scientific philosophy, because it's a presentation of the truth. The realizations that were there by the sages in their meditations about the entity or the supreme being called Brahman, there's no question about that. It's about the intellectual presentation, and that's where a different perspective can come and challenge it. And when it's challenged, it sharpens your presentation. So in this lesson, we delve into the dynamic philosophical dialogue between the Vedanta and Buddhism, focusing on the differing views of the self, the Atman, and the nature of reality. Swami Vivekananda presents the Buddhistic challenge to the Vedantic idea of an enduring Atman. That's what we read in the last class, that there is an enduring permanent reality. And the Buddhists actually don't accept that, so there's a challenge. And he explores the arguments about substance and qualities and the succession of mental states. Through this debate, we encounter questions about individuality, like what is this ego or I, the existence of a personal God, the logic of dualism and non-dualism, Dvaita and Advaita. By examining these contrasting perspectives, we gain a deeper understanding of how Vedanta responds to the Buddhist critiques and affirms its vision of a single infinite self underlying all existence, and that we are that glorious self, one with the universal self. I am Atma Brahma. While we are appearing to be a little wave, constantly in change, but behind that wave is that infinite ocean, and that is the true nature of that wave when it merges into that. And that's the glory of self-realization. And it's for that purpose we undertake all the spiritual disciplines, not for just a peace of mind and some success in this life. No, we are that infinite being. Think about the wonderful experience that would be, or that were experienced by the sages, and that is our divine birthright also. And if it's ours, then we should claim it. So let's start. What did the Buddhists say? The Buddhist challenge was there's no need for substance. So there are two things, substance and qualities. Qualities are the attributes that are constantly changing. Substance is the material that is the permanent part of it. And the Buddhist says there's no need for that substance, no need to have the Atman. Let's read this. But now comes a tremendous fight. Here are the Buddhists who equally analyze the body into a material stream. Stream means it's constantly changing. Matter is just flowing in and flowing out, like we eat food, we construct parts of our body. At the same time, so many cells are dying. It's a constant flow. We talked about that vortex, like the cyclone or tornado or the dust devil. It's a vortex of energy that is constantly sucking in matter from one end and throwing out at the other end. So the Buddhists say it's just a flow. And they also analyze, as equally analyze the mind into another. The mind is also a succession of thoughts, okay, that are flowing in. And as for this Atman, they state that it is unnecessary. So we need not assume the Atman at all, they say. What is the use of substance and qualities adhering to any substance? We say, as a Buddhist say, the gunas or the qualities and, and the qualities alone are sufficient. It is illogical to assume two causes where one will explain the whole thing. And the fight went on, and all the theories which held the doctrine of substance, the doctrine of the Atman, were thrown to the ground by the Buddhists. So they are very, very logical in that sense. There was a breakup all along the line of those who held on to the doctrine of substance and qualities, that you have a soul and that I have a soul and everyone has a soul separate from the mind and body, and that each one is an individual. This is how the Vedanta and the Sankhya say that you have a soul, I have a soul. It's not just some constant change, and when we die, then the change stops and it all ends up into nothing. There's nothing left over at the end of the day. So, so this is the Buddhistic challenge that was thrown, and it was very serious because it disrupted your existing philosophy and the way the philosophy behind all the religious practices that assumes the Atman or takes it for granted, and not only granted, it wants to realize that Atman. Now the Buddhists have come and dashed it down to the ground. So next is dualism, Khanikavada, and the critique of a personal God. So far, we have seen that the idea of dualism is all right, for there is the body, then there is the fine body, the mind, or the antakarna we talked about in the previous classes. There is this Atman, and in and through all the Atmans is that being called the Paramatman, God. This is how Vedanta says. The difficulty is here that this Atman and Paramatman are both called substance, to which the mind and body and so-called substances adhere like so many qualities. Nobody has ever seen a substance. None can ever conceive. What we conceive is the quality, the characteristics, the attributes, the properties. We don't see the substance. So when we say that's a tree, what we are seeing are the properties of the tree. That's a structure, it has got leaves and things. The treeness actually is not conceivable. And what is conceived through the senses are the properties, the qualities here. So nobody has ever seen a substance. None can ever conceive. What is the use of thinking of this substance? So this is the Buddhist. He says what we are experiencing through our senses and in our mind is only this property, the qualities. Why not become a Khanikavadin and say that whatever exists is this succession of mental currents and nothing more? So Khanikavada is the philosophy of momentariness. Everything is momentary, constantly changing. Now, I did a little bit of research and I will show it to you. What is this? Shanikavada. All right. All right. Let's go into that. Then we'll understand the challenge. So, a Shanikavadin is someone who upholds a doctrine that all that exists. What is that? All that exists All thing exists only for a single moment. Shana. Shana means a moment. And perishes the next moment. That means there's no continuity. It's the blink and you miss it school of metaphysics, quite literally. Where does this come from? The term is traditionally associated with the Buddhist philosophers, especially in the Adidharma and the Yogacara thinkers who argued that, what do they say? The world is made of momentary dharmas. Nothing has enduring substance. What appears as continuity is only a rapid succession, like frames in a movie. So if you take a movie reel and you look at, you will see individual frames. But when you run it through the projector, it gives a sense of motion and continuity. So how did that happen? Well, that is an illusion. It appears to be, but really it is every single frame. Even the mind is a flow of momentary flashes, like one thought after the other. In short, continuity is a sweet illusion baked into consciousness. The Khanikavadin says, you think you are the same person as yesterday. That was the previous frame. That means there's no continuity. Now, why is this philosophically important? So because of their view directly challenges the Indian schools that affirm, what are the schools? What do they affirm? A continuous self, the Atman, as in Vedanta and Yoga, where they talk about the Atman and the Purusha, and an enduring substance, a substratum behind this universe, the Brahman, and that is accepted in these schools of Sankhya, Nyaya, and Vaisheshika. So the momentariness theory pushes you to examine what is challenged. They ask these questions like, what truly persists? What is the I? What is the thread that holds the moments together? This is where Vedanta steps in with its characteristic smile and say, dear friend, the unchanging witness, Shakshi alone gives coherence. Like, yes, you have got this light that you are shining out to create a movie, but if there's no screen, then how will that movie form? And if you are observing these momentary stuffs, who is the observer? So that is the question that Vedanta will ask. So in Vedanta, they say, Vedanta gently teases the Shanikvadin. He says, if everything is momentary, who is the one that knowing that moments are momentary? Because if that person, there has to be an observer, like I'm aware of a thought and then another thought and another thought in my thought process. But if I'm not observing, like you go to sleep or something, then the thoughts are still there, but there's no one to know type of thing. Because the very recognition of impermanence presupposes a non-momentary knower. Still the Buddhist, so the Buddhist, what was the contribution? When they challenged the Vedanta traditions, when you're challenged, you are you have to dive deep into a philosophy and thinking and sharpens you. And so Buddhist did that. The Buddhist sharpened India's philosophical tools for centuries, like friendly rivals in a cosmic debate hall. And who was the main person who did that? Acharya Shankara. He had this. So if you read the commentaries on the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras, Acharya Shankara's, you'll find a lot of time is spent because in Acharya's time, Shankara's time, the Buddhists were pretty prominent in challenging and counter refuting the ideas that were challenged by the Buddhists. So Shankara's refutation of the Shanikvadins is one of these delightful moments in Indian philosophy where razor sharp knowledge, logic meets a touch of gentle mischief. He doesn't attack them. He simply shows smilingly that their own reasoning quietly collapses under its own momentariness. How does he do that? He says, if everything is momentary, how does knowledge happen? The Shanikvadin says, a thing exists for one moment and then it perishes. Shankara,
നോട്ട്സ് ഞാൻ ചുമ്മാ വീഡിയോ ലിങ്ക് മാത്രം ഇട്ടുവച്ചാ അങ്ങനെ ഒന്ന്
Sunesh, if you can put your mic here. So Shankara says, politely asks, knowledge requires a relationship between a knower and known. We've been discussing this. When the knower and known come together in that junction, what is knowledge is formed. But if the object and the mind flesh exist for a single instant each, they can never meet because the knower of a moment one perishes before he can contact the object of moment two. It is like saying two fireflies meet in the dark, but each lives only for one blink. So Shankara asks, if your dharma perishes in each instant, knowledge would never rise. Even the knowledge that things are momentary, even that will not rise. So that was one counter argument. Then he says, so who is remembering the previous moment? The Buddhists say a memory is just a new momentary mental event caused by a previous. But if there's no continuity between the previous one and the new one, then how does it? So Shankara asks, if you remember a moment two, if the rememberer of moment two is totally different from the experience of moment one, why call it memory at all? Because memory presupposes continuity. So without an enduring witness, there will be no personal identity because the I of the previous moment is not the I of the next moment. And as such, there's no moral responsibility. What you did has got no counter consequences. So because that other person is totally different from the one who acted before, there's no continuity of karma and there is no spiritual progress. What's the meaning? It becomes illogical. So it says, it's like saying a new flame that appears in a lamp is like saying a new flame that appears in a lamp is the very same flame of yesterday. Shankara says that's very nice poetry, but weak metaphysics. Then he says, if the self is momentary, who is seeking liberation? So I'm here, I have a self. And if I'm not going to be there seeking at the time of nirvana, then how does it hold everything together? So a momentary being perishes instantly. So why talk about bondage and liberation and effort and enlightenment and samsara? So this is how Shankara challenged it. He says, if the one who suffers in samsara is not the one who attains liberation, whom are you actually helping? Spiritual life becomes unintelligible in the world of disjointed sparks. And fourthly, he says, momentariness requires a permanent witness. That is, this is his deepest and quietest blow. To say that things change from moment to moment already assumes something enduring that is witnessing or seeing this change. A witness who is not swallowed by the change. Like you need to have that screen on which the movie will be projected. Change cannot be known without a changeless knower. That's what Acharya Shankar says. And this is the pure Advaita. The unchanging self illumines changing phenomena, just as a lamp remains still while dancers whirl around it. So there is this Upanishad say, Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasha sarvamidam vibhati. Tameva bhantam. Tam means the Atman. Anubhat, when the Atman is, because Atman is like the sun, self-luminous all the time as consciousness. Because Tameva Bhantam means verily because of the luminosity or the consciousness of the Atman, everything is illumined. So like when the sun is there, the sun illumines everything by its light. By its light, everything is revealed. So if that consciousness is not there within us, then the body is there, the senses are there, the brain is there, the mind is there, everything is there, but there will be no perception, no experience, anything. So without that all, all knowing self-illumined entity as the Atman, everything falls apart. Even the divide cannot be had because you assume that you are a conscious being. So the Khanikavada defeats himself. Shankara's final, what he says, if all is momentary, then your doctrine too is momentary. And no need to trouble anyone the next moment. So this sort of is a nice way how he challenges it. So this is the uh, how Khanikavada Vadins proposed, presented their challenge to the spiritual traditions of India at that time, and how Acharya Shankara took it up and confronted them. I thought we will explain that a little bit, so when we read these pages, these next paragraphs, things will make some sense. All right, so now let us look at this paragraph. So far we have seen that the idea of dualism is all right, that for there is the body, and then there is the fine body, the mind, and then there's the Atman, and in and through all the Atmans is the Paramatman God. That is the Vedanta philosophy. The difficulty is here that this Atman and Paramatman are both called substance, to which the mind and the body and the so-called substances adhere like so many qualities. Nobody has ever seen a substance, none can ever conceive it. What's the use of thinking of this substance? That's what the Buddhist is challenging. Why not become Khanikavadin and say whatever exists is this succession of mental currents and nothing more? One of the examples they give is in a dark room, if you take a torch or a candle, something, and you whirl it around very fast in a circle, it will create an illusion of a circle. That means the flame is all around the circle, but really it is always at one point. But the impression it leaves in the mind, in the sense of perception, creates an illusion of a circle. So that's what the Khanikavadin says. There's really no circle. There's only at one moment any time, but this is an illusion. So they say, the one that say that whatever exists is the succession of mental currents and nothing more. They do not adhere to each other. They do not form a unit. One is chasing the other, like waves in the ocean, never complete, never forming one unit whole. And he says, man is a succession of waves, and when one goes away, it generates another, and the cessation of all these wave forms is called nirvana. So the idea is to put an end to all this change that is there. And then what is left? Nothing is. You see that dualism is mute before this. It is impossible that it can bring up any argument, and the dualistic God also cannot be retained here. The idea of a God that is omnipresent and yet is a person who creates without hands and moves without feet and so on, and who has created this universe as a kumbhakara. Kumbha means a pot. So kumbhakara is a potter. The potter takes some clay, so the clay is the substance, and the potter is the instrumental cause, they call it. And together he uses the clay to create a pot. That means there's an external God who has created this universe, the creator God. That's the idea in dualism. And that just as a kumbhakara, a potter, has created a ghata, a pot, the Buddhist declares that it is childish, and that if this is the God, he is going to fight this God and not worship it. This universe is full of misery, he says. If it's the work of a God, we are going to fight this God. And secondly, this God is illogical and impossible, as all you are aware, as all you are aware. We need not go into the defects of the design theory. So this is, how did this universe come and all that. Yes, all our Shanikas have shown them fully well, and so the personal God also fell to pieces. Now, what's the answer? So truth is and nothing but the truth is the watchword of Advaita. Satyameva jayate nanritam satyena pantha vitato devayana. Satyameva jayate, you'll see in the monogram of the Indian government, you'll see truth alone triumphs. Truth alone triumphs, and not untruth. Through truth alone is the way to gods or the higher spheres, Devayana. Everybody marches forward under that banner, and but it is only to crush the weaker man's position by his own. You come with your dualistic idea of God to pick up a quarrel with a poor man who is worshipping an image, and you think you are wonderfully rational. You can confound him. But if he turns around and shatters your personal God and calls that it is an imaginary ideal, where are you? So here you will see that Swamiji will sometimes take that opposite position to challenge and show the shortcomings and weaknesses in our philosophies. Ultimately, he will show how Advaita beautifully reconcile it. So these are the problems with dualism. If God has created this universe and He is all-loving God and is present in the heart of all beings and He is the doer of everything, then why is there so much misery, so much disease and fighting and wars and all that we see in the society? What is God doing? Is He not taking care of His creation and His children? Is He not protecting them? Has He lost control? Is there somebody other than God who is also interfering in His creation, like the Satan? Is Satan even more powerful than God, that he is running this earth? All those type of thoughts will come to challenge dualism. So, a person with a little philosophy goes to even a simple person who doesn't have a philosophy, who is just doing his simple thing, and we try to unsettle him. That's why Sri Ramakrishna said, never disturb anyone's faith. কখনো কারো ভাব নষ্ট করবেন না, in Bengali. Whatever somebody is comfortable with, it doesn't matter how rudimentary it is. Maybe he's just a ritualistic person there. That is what is necessary for that person, and it's good for him at that moment. Don't disturb that person. Just like if a child is studying in the kindergarten and using slate and blackboard, you don't go and say, hey, no, you shouldn't be using this, you should use a pen or whatever is there, is computer. No, at that stage of that development, that has got a utility, he will outgrow it. But don't disturb anyone. Don't, otherwise we hurt and stunt their spiritual growth. You help them from where they are, but do not harm them. So you fall back on faith and so on, and raise the cry of atheism, the old cry of the weak man. Whosoever defeats him is an atheist. So in this age and time, you come across many people who say they are atheists, and if you talk to them nicely, they will challenge you. Why you're a believer, you had faith in God, and suddenly you have dropped everything? You will see that they will come and give this type of arguments, where if there's a God, how does it help? I need that help, but where is He? And why there's all this suffering and misery and all those things? So maybe it's just an illusion that people in religion are preaching, and if they cannot answer him logically, then he just drops it, uh, and he calls himself an atheist. Actually, he's honest. He's seeking something, but we have not been able to provide a satisfactory explanation and reasoning to him, and that's why he has dropped things. But basically, he's outgrowing those forms of rituals and traditions because his buddhi has awakened a little bit. So there's nothing wrong. It's just that it requires a higher philosophy, a high understanding of things. And that's where Vedanta and all that comes in. Says if you explain it to them, they say, that makes sense. I'm quite happy with that. I remember many years back in Fiji, we had a nurse who came from Australia as a volunteer. And of course, was helping us in our medical center. And I had came into and of course we have Sharda Medical Center name on the mother's name and all that. So it was very fine. Everything is all right. That's what you do. And so I asked him, when was the last time you went to church? And he said, when he was a kid, he went to church. Maybe he went there when he got married or something. But otherwise, he said, no, I don't go to the church anymore, because I don't believe in that God who is sitting in the cloud with a silver white beard and all judgmental, will look at my records of my karma and decide whether I should go to hell or heaven. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I said, that's fine. And then I talked to him about the Vedantic conception of God as a principle, as a consciousness that is present in the heart of all beings and all things, that connects us everything, and that we are always in touch with that divine principle, and that's in everyone, and that is the rationale behind all the services we are offering, and how people can and have a more coherent, meaningful life. And when I explained in that way, he said, "No, that's fine. I'm all right with such a understanding of God." who is not a person but a principle that pervades everything. So it's an example where somebody wants to outgrow those dualistic conceptions of God, but if we don't have a higher philosophy to them, available to them, then in their all sincerity, they will say, well, I've dropped that one, older one, but I have nothing else to believe in. And that's why Vedanta, being very rational and scientific, Swamiji says, is the future religion or the philosophy that will appeal to a scientific, logical mind. So Swamiji says, if you are to be rational all along the line, and if not, allow others the same privilege which you ask for yourselves. How can you prove the existence of this God? On the other hand, it can be almost disproved. There is not a shadow of proof as to his existence, and there are very strong arguments to the contrary. How will you prove his existence with your God and his gunas and the infinite number of souls which are substance and each soul an individual? In what are you an individual? You are not as you are not as the body, for you know today better than even the Buddhists of old knew that what may have been matter in the sun has just now become matter in you and will go out and become matter in the plants, then where is your individuality, Mr. So and so? The same applies to the mind. Where is your individuality? You have one thought tonight and another tomorrow. You do not think the same way as you thought when you were a child, and old men do not think the same way as they did when they were young. Where is your individuality then? Do not say it is in consciousness, this ahankara, because this only covers a small part of your existence. While I'm talking to you, all my organs are working and I'm not conscious of it. If consciousness is the proof of existence, they do not exist then because I'm not conscious of them. Where are you then with your personal God theories? How can you prove such a God? So Swamiji puts these questions from this sort of Buddhistic direction, and then he will talk about them. So Buddhists also critique a personal God. Again, the Buddhists will stand up and declare it is not it not only is it illogical, but it is immoral also. For it teaches men to be a coward and to seek assistance outside, and nobody can give him such help. Here is the universe, men made it. Why then depend on an imaginary being outside whom nobody ever saw or felt or got help from? Why then do you make cowards of yourselves and teach your children that the highest state of man is to be like a dog and go crawling before this imaginary being, saying that you are weak and impure and everything vile in the universe? On the other hand, the Buddhists may urge you not only urge you uh, not only that you tell a lie, but that you bring a tremendous amount of evil upon your children. For mark you, this world is one of hypnotism. Whatever you tell yourself, that you become. Almost the first words the great Buddha uttered were, "What you think, that you are. What you will think, that you will be." If this is true, do not teach yourself that you are nothing. Eh, that you cannot do anything unless you are helped by somebody who does not live here but sits above the clouds. The result will be that you will be more and more weakened every day by constantly repeating, "We are very impure, Lord make us pure." The result will be that you will hypnotize yourself into all sorts of vices. The Buddhist says that 90% of these vices that you see in every society are on account of this idea of a personal God. This is awful, and this is an awful idea of the human being, that the end and the aim of this expression of life, this wonderful expression of life, is to become like a dog. Says the Buddhist to the Vaishnava, if your ideal, your aim and goal is to go to the place called Vaikuntha, where God lives, and there stand before Him with folded hands all through eternity, it is better to commit suicide than do that. The Buddhist may even urge that is why he is going to create annihilation, nirvana, to escape this. I am putting these ideas before you as a Buddhist just for the time being, because nowadays all the Vedic ideas are said to make you immoral, and I'm trying to tell you how the other side looks. Let us face both sides boldly and bravely. So, this is the beauty of Swami Vivekananda. He's not simply trying to beat his own drum about Advaita. He also makes a point to understand and answer them, the challenges and the questions that are put with great sincerity. And therefore, he has articulated for us the central challenges that the Buddhists have put. And remember, these were actual debates happening, and people were getting influenced and dropping their religion and adopting or getting very confused. And when that begins to happen, then these great teachers come and they re-established the dharma. So you'll see in India, in every ancient time, uh, in long intervals, these great incarnations come, but in between, the great teachers come, like Acharya Shankara, Madhvacharya. They are not incarnations, but they are special teachers for this particular purpose. And so Acharya Shankara came at the time when Buddhistic India was really, firing in all cylinders and creating all this confusion. And he came and he took the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedanta Sutras, the Prasthanatrayas that we talked about earlier, and using that, he established not some faith and belief, but in a very logical way, he countered these arguments of the Buddhists. So, okay, so he'll go deep into it and then come with a solution. We have seen, first of all, that this cannot be proved, this idea of a personal God creating the world. Is there any child that can believe this today? Even the Kumbhakara, the potter, creates a ghata, pot. Therefore, a God created the world. If this is so, then your potter is God also. And if anyone tells you that he acts without head and hands, you may take him to a lunatic asylum. Like you say, in the Bible we read, God created the world for 6 days. On the seventh day, then he rested. So what did he create it out of? And if you ask those questions, people will say, "Oh, you just have to believe these things because it's written in the book," type of thing. And many people will say, "You can keep your philosophy and all those things. I don't want to believe that." So, has ever your personal God, the creator of the world to whom you cry all your life, helped you? Is the challenge from the modern science. So, he takes the position of the modern scientist also. They will prove that any help that you ever had could have been got by your own exertions, self effort. And better still, you need not have spent your energy in that crying. You could have done it better without that weeping and crying. And we have seen that along with this idea of a personal God comes the tyranny and priestcraft. This is a theme that Swamiji talks about. You'll see quite a bit of that still in this age and time. And the priests, Swamiji calls it the tyranny of priestcrafts. Let's see what he says. Tyranny and priestcraft have prevailed wherever this idea existed. And until the lie is knocked on the head, says the Buddhist, tyranny will not cease. So long as man thinks he has to cower before a supernatural being, so long there, so long there will be priests to claim rights and privileges, the middlemen, and to make man cower before them, while this poor man will continue to seek some priest to act as an interceder for them. So we'll see that. The other day, somebody, pretty well educated person, his daughter is getting married. He says, "Oh, Swamiji, I have to go to India, and there is this. The priests have said that some stars are not properly lined up, and we have to do some ritual and ceremony to sort these things out before the wedding can happen. You go to they look at your palm and tell you whether something is wrong, and something has to be sorted out, and in the process they'll make some money. But people know that they're sometimes being taken for a ride, and yet the conditioning is so harsh, so deep, that out of fear, what if I don't do what he's saying? maybe more harm will come to me. It's better to do this, even though people know that they're being taken for a ride. And this is how religion declines. So you may do away with the Brahmin, but mark me, those who do uh, will put themselves in his place and will be worse off, because the Brahmin is a certain amount of generosity in him, but these upstarts are always the worst of tyrannizers. If a beggar gets wealth, he thinks the whole world of a bit of a straw. So these priests must be there so long as this personal God idea persists, and it will be impossible to think of any great morality in society. Priestcraft and tyranny go hand in hand. Why was this invented? Because some strong men in old times got people into their hands and said, "You must obey us or we will destroy you." That was the long and short of it. Some Sanskrit verses there. It is the idea of the Thundara who kills everyone who does not obey him. So, out of fear, it's a religion of fear, and I don't want to displease this God, but if it is displeased, then misfortune or illness or those things will visit me, and therefore, to propitiate an external personal God, I try to worship and please him. That is the idea in this dualistic personal God. Then there is this. Next, the Buddhist says, "You have been perfectly rational up to this point, that everything is the result of the law of karma." That's another fundamental idea, principle, or doctrine that we have in our Hinduism. Karma. We say, the result. This life is a result of karma. Whatever happens to is a result of karma, and all that. So he examines that. You believe in an infinity of souls, and that souls are without birth and death, and this infinity of souls is, and this infinity of souls and the belief in the law of karma are perfectly logical, no doubt. They cannot be a cause without an effect. The present must have had its cause in the past. That means this life is there, so there must have been a cause of karma in the previous life, and will have its effect in the future. The Hindu says the karma is inert, jada. It's not chaitanya or consciousness or spirit. Therefore, some chaitanya or some consciousness is necessary to bring this cause into fruition. Is it so that consciousness or chaitanya is necessary to bring this plant to fruition? If I planted the seed and add water, no consciousness is necessary. You may say that there is some original consciousness in there, but the souls themselves were that consciousness. Nothing else is necessary. If humans have it too, what necessity is there for God? So basically, this is how the modern day scientists are saying. Why do we bring a personal God? And the Jains say this, who, unlike the Buddhists, believe in souls but do not believe in God. So the Jain philosophy, they don't believe there's a God out there. Yes, there are souls. Where are you? Where are you logical? Where are you moral? And when you criticize Advaitism and fear that it will be for immorality, just read a little of what has been done in India by the dualistic sects. If there has been 20,000 Advaitist blackguards, there have been 20,000 Dvaitist blackguards also. Generally speaking, there will be more Dvaitis, blackguards, because it takes a better type of mind to understand Advaitism, and Advaitis can scarcely be frightened into anything. Scarcely be frightened into anything. What remains for you Hindus then? There is no help for you out of the clutches of the Buddhist. You may quote the Vedas, but he does not believe in them. He will say, my Tripitikas, these are the scriptures of the Buddhists, say otherwise, and they are without beginning and or end, not even written by Buddha. For Buddha says he is only reciting them. They are eternal. So that's the Buddhistic position. And he adds, yours are wrong. Ours are the true Vedas. Yours are manufactured by the Brahmin priests. Therefore, out with them. How do you escape? So this is how he takes it up. So we have read today the challenge that the Buddhistics and the Jains through to the spiritual traditions of those days when Acharya Shankara came. So how do you get out? Here's the counter. So here's the way out of it. Take up the first objection, the metaphysical one, that substance and qualities are different. Says the Advaitists, they are not, because that's dualism, there's a substance and quality. There is no difference between substance and qualities. You know the old illusion, how the rope is taken for or mistaken for a snake, and when you see this, uh, yeah, so in the evening at dusk, you're walking along the path, there's a rope lying, but you see the shape and you think there's a snake there. So that is the very well-known Rajju Sharpa. Rajju is the rope, Sarpa is the snake illustration used in Advaita philosophy. That the substance is the rope, the illusion of the snake does not really exist. It's an illusion. It's a result of ignorance. That's all, avidya. You know the old illustration, how the rope is taken for the snake, and when you see the snake, you do not see the rope at all. The rope has vanished. So you see one thing at a time. You don't see the rope and the snake at the same time. Either you see the rope or you see the snake, and when the light falls, you see it's a rope, then the snake has disappeared. So they are not two things. Whatever is one appeared, the snake, the rope was always there. It just appeared as the snake. So Swami in Advaita, they say that we should not say they're two substance. What's the substance and the quality, they are the two things. And there's a beautiful lecture in volume 3 of Swami Vivekananda, one existence appearing as many. One existence appearing as many. Nice reading where he explores this beautifully and shows the Advaitic perspective out of it. You should read that. So it says, dividing the thing into substance and quality is a metaphysical something in the brain of philosophers, for never can they be in effect outside. You see qualities if you are an ordinary man, and substance if you are a great yogi. But you will never see both in the same time. So this is the Advaita. Advaita means not two. Dvaita means two. Advaita means not two. That means there's there is no snake and the rope. Whatever is sometimes is perceived as the rope when knowledge is there, and when ignorance is there, it is perceived as the snake. So there's no need to assume that the substance, that what you call the substance and the qualities are different, separate. You see qualities when you're an ordinary man, and substance if you're a great yogi, but you never see both at the same time. So Buddhists, your quarrel about substance and qualities has been but a miscalculation which does not stand on fact. This is the Advaita rejoinder to the Buddhist. But if substance is unqualified, there can be only one. If you take qualities of the soul and show these qualities are in the mind, really superimposed on the soul, then there can never be two souls for its qualification. That makes a difference between one soul and another. How do you know that one soul is different from the other? So this is, we also have that type of thing. Like I have a soul and you have a soul, and one soul is getting liberated and the other one is still there. And so there is one philosophy called uh, ek, ek Atmavada. There's only one soul. There's only one ocean that appears as many. The many is in appearance. It is as a result of ignorance. It's like the snake that we are seeing. But the reality is only the ocean type of thing. So these are the questions. How do you know that one soul is different from the other? Owing to certain differentiating marks, certain qualities. And where qualities do not exist, how can there be differentiation? So, yes, when you're on the surface of the ocean, you see different waves, one different in different time and space, different size. But when you go deep inside, there are no waves, it's just one mass of water all around. Therefore, there are not two souls, but there is but one, and your Paramatman is unnecessary. it is this very soul. That one is called Paramatman. That same one is called Jivatman, and so on. So, I am Atma, Brahma. That which appears to be Atman is really the Paramatman. It's just two perspectives of of uh, of perception. One nice way to explain is like this: what we see depends on where we are. Knowledge is relative. So if you go to the ocean and stand on the beach and look from outside, standing on the beach, what do you see? You see so many waves, and they're real, each one different from the other. So that's one perspective, dualistic perspective. Now you get into the water, and you just go up to the depth where water is at the level of the surface of the ocean. And now and then the wave washes over your head, and then next moment you see the waves. So what is your experience? Your perception? At that moment, the perception is that I experience the water inside the wave, and then also at the same time, I sometimes experience the foam of the wave. Okay, so this is Vishishtha Advaita. And then when you take a dive into the ocean, deeper, underwater, then what do you see? You see water and water in all directions. So, which is the truth? All of them are true as an experience, depending on where you are standing. For the person who is standing on the beach, his experience is all these waves. For the person who is at the level of the water, now and then he sees so many duality or the variety. And now and then also sees the substance that is common to all of them, means all the waves are made out of water. And then he goes inside, he says, only water, which is the reality, and that names and forms are rising on the surface. Those names and forms appear and disappear. The ocean alone is the reality. So, what is the truth? Depending on where we are positioned. So, when we are functioning through the senses, then this world of names and forms, colors, sounds, and all those things is our everyday experience. I experience myself as a body and all that, and I have hunger and disease and this and that. That is my experience. That means something was, but I'm experiencing is this world. When the same mind rises to another level, then that world of names and forms disappears. As Swami Vivekananda raised the mind of Manmathanath Ganguly, then this world of names and trees and everything disappeared, and he was experiencing something finer, which he called the mind. And when he raised his mind even to the highest level, then here and now he experienced that infinite ocean of consciousness. And when his mind came down, then all these whatever these perceptions returned, and he was back into his personality, his body, and his identity of that particular person and his function there. So all this exists here and now, but what we experience is one at a time. You can't experience all three because there's only one reality. So one existence appearing as many. And this world that we see, in which we are born, in which we live, and most of us die there, is just one reading of this entity called Brahman through this sense bound sensory in the senses in the mind. When we change our frequency of the mind, this world disappears. It happens when we even go to sleep because the mind changed to a different frequency, and then it sort of returns to this waking state again. And in between this, we shuttle up and down in our everyday experience. What the yogi says that through proper training of the mind, this mind can be lifted to a higher plane where we come to that one, that experience of that oneness, which is pure consciousness. And at that time, I am that consciousness. And that experience is so powerful that even if we return to this body idea, we will have uh, that experience pervading that no, I am that infinite being. And and when this body falls off, the form disappears. My existence is not in any way affected. I am that eternal, immortal being. That type of understanding is the Advaitic understanding. So, so therefore, there are not two souls, but there is but one, and your Paramatman is unnecessary. It is this very soul. That one is called Paramatman. The very one is called Jivatman, and so on. And you dualists, such as the Sankhyas and others who say the soul is Vibhu, that is omnipresent, how can you make two infinites? So if say, my soul is infinite, your soul is infinite, how can they be two infinites? Because, infinity means there's no boundaries. Otherwise, one will be limiting the other. There can be only one. What else? This one is the one infinite Atman. Everything else is manifestation. There the Buddhist stops, but it does not end there. So he counters the logics of the Buddhists, but it's not just criticizing and defeating them. Advaita stands on its own feet. And then, so Swamiji then puts the Advaitic position is not simply denying or fighting back the Buddhists, but it asserts its own, it has got its own beautiful position. The Advaitist position is not merely a weak one of criticism. The Advaitist criticizes others when they come too near to him and just throws them away. That is all. But he propounds his own position. He is the only one that criticizes and does not stop with criticism and showing books. Here you are. You say the universe is a thing of constant, continuous motion. In Vesti, that means finite, everything is moving. You are moving, the table is moving, motion is everywhere. It is samsara. It is this constant motion is called Jagat. Jagat means that which is moving. Therefore, there cannot be an individuality in this Jagat. Individuality means indivisibility. Because individuality means that which does not change. There cannot be any changeful individuality. It's a contradiction in terms. There is no such thing as individuality in this little world of ours, this Jagat. Thoughts and feelings, mind and body, man and animals and plants are in a constant state of flux. But suppose you take the universe as a unit, whole. Can it change or move? So they are moving relative to each other. But as a whole, the idea of change doesn't apply. Certainly not. Motion is possible in comparison with something which is a little less in motion or entirely motionless. The universe as a whole, therefore, is motionless, unchangeable. You are therefore an individual then and then alone when you are the whole of it. When the realization of I am the universe, Aham Brahmasmi, that is the idea. Brahman means, it comes from the Sanskrit root Brihat, which means infinite. I am that infinite being. That is why the Vedanta says that so long as there are two, fear does not cease. It's only when one does not see another, does not feel another, so he's basically quoting from the Upanishads, when it is all one, then alone fear ceases, then alone death vanishes, then alone samsara vanishes. Advaita teaches us, therefore, that man is individual in being universal and not in being particular. You are immortal only when you are the whole. You are fearless and deathless only when you are the universe. And then that which you call the universe is the same as that you call God, the same as that you call existence, the same that you call the whole. It is the one undivided existence, Akhand Satchidananda, which is taken to be the manifold world which we see, as also others who are in the same state of mind as we. People who have done a little bit of better karma and get a better state of mind, when they die, look upon is at Swarga or heaven, and see Indras and so forth, and gods and goddesses and ancestors and everyone. People still higher will see it, the very same thing, as Brahmaloka. And the perfect ones will neither see the earth, nor the heavens, nor any loka at all. The universe will have vanished, and Brahman will be in its stead. So that is the position or the perspective of Advaita. So it is like this. Yeah, Shemaine.
Oh, sorry, Swamiji. So, is the essence of that we are, our experiences is more permutations of an illusion, in that our experience of individuality is illusionary, that because we are just permutations of something that's projected or unreal. So when we live our lives, the things that happen to us, they're just the permutations of karma, but in the projected maya.
Yeah, so the person who's asking that when you say we means we are the wave. So from the wave's perspective, then there is a cause and effect. I was not there, I was created, I have this existence. At some point it will disappear in the water, but the energy will bring it forth again. So this recycling is there. There are other waves, they're nearby me, they're relative to me. I interact with them, they interact. All these things they're called relative truths. Ah, um, Vyavharika Satta, they call it in Sanskrit. Means for all practical purposes, they make some sense and we are all right with that. But there is another reality called Paramarthika Satta, that means the absolute truth. What is the absolute truth? It's that wholeness, the universal being. That means all the waves plus even beyond the waves, from the ocean's perspective. So from the ocean's perspective, he says, yeah, all the waves come and go, but as an ocean, I don't come and I don't go. I'm there all the time, self-existent, eternal, immortal type of thing. And so it's just, where we are and what is our perspective. And what Advaita says, yes, we have the choice to look upon the world from the waves perspective, or you want to drop this and have that higher perspective where everything is eternal and immortal, and that is what is moksha. And that's why we try to let go the identification with the wave so that we can have the new experience or identity as the ocean. You cannot have both at the same time because it's like the snake and the rope type of thing. And that's why letting go of all the things that limit us and finiteness or identify us to matter and the mind and all this, the individuality and the ego and everything. That's why renunciation is the fundamental principle behind all spirituality. Otherwise, we can't, if you don't give this up, then we can't take the next one up. Yeah. I'm not sure whether I explained the question that you were asking, because but if not, ask again. Let me see.
Oh, no, thank you, Swamiji. That's good. I'm sorry I didn't ask it very clearly, but thank you.
Yeah. So it's all about that perspective, what we understand from this. Yes, if there were no realized souls, then all of us are tuned to this world and we take this world for granted. And that's the common experience of everyone. We come from somewhere, we live, we die. But then when we come to this knowledge of others who went beyond that little um capsule of that individuality and personality, and that what we call the human thing, and expanded themselves to be identified with the totality, the absolute, the whole ocean, and in which all waves are part of it. When they return back to us, then say, hey, we do ourselves great injustice when we stick to this little individuality. There's a greater, much, much greater possibility in a human being, and we should, and the goal is to ultimately realize that the essence from which this wave appears, and that is called mukti or nirvana, or God realization and self-realization. But the interesting thing is that state is so far, so much superior from compared to this, and that's the rationale why we want the best, we want the highest, we want, and that's the effort, why we make an effort to, or we struggle spiritually to realize that. Yes, Sunish.
Swamiji, they call that in Upanishad, the Ayamatma Brahma, right? This very selfless Brahman. So, what does that mean? Because when you say self, right, which is I, right now we feel a sense of self, right? I. So, are we saying that itself is Brahman?
No.
Because
How can that wave be the ocean?
so because there can only
So,
be one self, right? Which is
so, so,
I. So,
so your answer is, this is very nicely explained throughout the scriptures. There are these four teachings and called Mahabhakyas, the great sayings of the Vedas, which are to be meditated upon. The other one is called Tattvamasi. You are that being. So when they say you, it doesn't mean the physical body or the mind or the ego. It means the consciousness that is behind all this. Okay. The consciousness that is behind that individual, and the consciousness that is behind the whole macrocosm, the universe, is one. So if you say, to put it another way, wave in the ocean, one, the water in the wave is same H2O as the water in the ocean. That identity they are trying to assert, the content, not the name and form, which is the wave type of thing.
but
That's
But why are they calling it as self? Because when you say self, no, I'm not referring to body or mind, right? If you say self, there is something which is beyond body and mind, which is like, say, I exist, or I am. Uh, there is a feeling of I am or I exist, right? Which I believe is beyond body and mind. So, and that if we call that as a self, is that self what is consciousness? Because even that self feels very individual, doesn't feel like uh, it's universal, right? So,
because it seems individual because it is, you're operating it through because of its identification with the body and mind. Okay.
mm,
Okay.
okay.
Because you're asking that question, it's working through the mind, and the mind is limited.
Mm,
So we have that experience. And when you transcend the body and transcend the mind, then that it's like a soap bubble. Okay. All right. So a good example is there. You take some soap bubble, and that thing the children play around with. So what happens? A film of water, uh, which makes a bubble, encapsulates a certain amount of space inside, and that space is outside also. But that film, the bubble, forms the boundary, which says, this is what I am, this is little thing. And another bubble is there, and another bubbles are there. They apparently seem to limit the space, but really, does it, it creates an appearance that space has been divided. But when the bubble bursts, then that space was there all the time. They give another example is, if you take a pitcher and submerge it in water, then there is water inside and there's water outside. But the pot itself creates a bubble and an individuality. And that is that I sense we all have. I am this body, I am in this mind, blah, blah, blah. But when the pot is broken, then the water is inside feels its identity with the universal water that's outside. But it's water inside, water outside. So they say
oh,
the,
mm,
the essence of what is inside the pot and what is outside the pot is the same thing.
okay. So is that what they're trying to tell, that Atman is Brahman, when they say which is like the water inside the pot and the water outside are the same? Is that what they
Yeah.
mean?
You will have that experience when that pot breaks. Okay.
But Swamiji, as long as we live in this human body, right?
Mm.
That pot is still there. So this is just an understanding that look, there is a illusion of separation. There is a feeling of you are separate, and that feeling will continue, right, as long as you are a living being. But it's just an understanding in the mind saying that
Yeah. No,
the
it's not an intellectual thing. Refer to that example of Manmathanath Ganguly. So when they try to explain how did this infinite become this finite? How did that ocean become this wave? Why do I feel limited? And then you come up with this idea, concept of Maya. Maya creates all this diversity and limitations and all those type of things. But Maya is not just an intellectual idea or concept in our head. It is what we experience depending on at what frequency our mind is tuned to. It's better, the best way to explain is as an experience. It's not an intellectual thing, which Manmathanath Ganguly went. So refer to that thing. When his mind is at the gross sensory plane, aware of himself as the body, functioning through the eyes, ears, and all those things, then he experiences this world as manifold, and he himself experiences himself as an individual, which is our everyday experience. However, when that same mind is elevated to a high level through sadhana or through divine grace, then what happened to the world that was there in that person's experience? That experience changed, and he experienced a subtle world of thoughts and ideas. And when his mind went to the higher level, then he experienced everything as pure consciousness. So that means in that individual is that possibility to raise himself, to experience himself as that consciousness. And at that time, he will find that everything is also consciousness. And that is undivided, akhanda satchidananda, and that is a substratum of the universe. So when we say this is the individual, this is I, that is the person, the capsule in which we have entered, and we are living in it. And if we don't make an effort to get out of it, we die in it. Okay, that's experience. So try to think in those terms. All these planes of experiences are possible, and you'll experience one depending on the level at which the mind is tuned to. But they're all perceptions, remember. They're experiences.
Mm.
They're experiences. They're not the reality. This world that I see is my experience of something. If my mind changes, like I go to sleep or I'm in a dream world, this world has disappeared. It's not my experience then, see? But because we return to it again and again, then we sometimes think this is the reality of the things. No, the reality is the ocean. Waves appear and disappear. We appear and disappear, and so long we are happy in that wave nature, in that capsule, in that individuality, that's a limited state of being. So
Thanks,
Advaita,
Swamiji.
yeah, Advaita is a bit difficult to grasp. You have to, but if you have to wrestle with it for a while, and think and process it more, not through these philosophy things, but more by referring it to the realizations of people, and then you'll see a different degree of clarity comes, because they're not philosophizing. They had the experience, but they're struggling to put those experiences in language which is not designed uh, to describe things, explain things of the subtle nature. But they point something, they give a hint. So Swamiji says, Sri Ramakrishna says, the Vedas, the Upanishads, they only give a hint. You will never get the truth of it, understand out of it, but it's enough to spur us to aim for that experience and realization. That's why it's called self-realization. It is an experience, anubhuti. It's not a philosophy. Philosophically, we will not experience that. Okay. So read this. It's a bit of a abstract, but it's good to see how the philosophies were challenged by the Buddhists and the Jains, and how Advaita countered them, but not only countered them, how it is now trying to establish its own position. And then in the remaining sections, we'll discuss those teachings of the non-dual vision, Maya, Brahman. These concepts will begin to come here. The concept of Maya, limited knowledge, path of renunciation, the witness, Sakshi, and all that. Time, space, and causation, name and form, that is what is Maya. We'll read this. And from realism to unity, God is all present consciousness in behind everything. So those are the actual teachings, the positive side of what Advaita offers to us. It'll become more interesting there. Okay, shall we stop there then? Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tassat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Namaste.